Hey Glittervillians, how is everybody today? It's a happy Friday, but like every day is Friday now, so I guess we have to go with the theory of Glitterville's tagline, which is make every day a holiday. And today, the way we're going to do that is we're actually going to work on a project that was from originally Glitterville's Handmade Christmas. And in the book, when I did it, I actually did a snowflake ornament, which you can hang on your tree, which is really fun. But I got to thinking, how can we use that same magical process in another way? And what I came up with was making a geode like this one. Now these are very popular today, and you see them in lots of home decor, and Glitterville even sells one that looks like this, that has gold leaf on it. Now this one actually weighs probably 1/4 pound, so it's almost like, you really dug it up in the wild. And the way this is made is through a very simple process that I'm going to walk you through today. And the way it starts is with pipe cleaners. Now, although the color doesn't really matter, I like to think about the color that I'm actually going to make the geode. And this one, of course, was pink, which is my always go-to. And I like to start with a pipe cleaner that is that color that I'm going to use. But if you only have white ones, that's fine too. And you might want to make a white one, which is very crystally and diamond looking. But for now, I'm going to start by taking a pipe cleaner. And I'm just going to close it up at the end. Now, the other thing to think about here is the size that you make this depends on the jar that you have. Now, if you have a small jar like this, you're going to want to make one that will fit inside without touching any of the sides or the bottom. Now, this jar would be too small for one this size. And I think you saw in the thing I posted yesterday, this is a really big jar. And that's how I make the big geode. So keep that in mind when you actually start. But for this one, I've actually made sort of an egg shape out of the pipe cleaners. Then, because we're wanting to create this almost bowl effect like this, I'm going to take it and I'm going to start wrapping it around the side. And then I'm going to bend it like that, creating a bowl. And we'll go back and we'll continue to start making the ribs of the bowl that's going to become our geode. Now, in the Christmas book, when I made a snowflake, it's very sparse. But because we want this to be really coated and really sparkly like this and solid, the pipe cleaner structure that you're making also needs to be very solid. So I'm going to keep adding to do this. And it's actually a fun process because you can actually do it on lots of different things. I'm not sure that I'll do another day on this project, but another fun way to do it is actually on real eggs. You can take an eggshell and do the same thing, and the borax will grow over the egg and inside, so it would be a fun Easter project as well. So I'm just continuing to add to it. And you don't always have to go straight around. You can mix it, you can weave it. The idea is just that we're creating this cage that we can let the borax grow on. And there's been a lot of questions about what is borax. And I don't have the real scientific answer to that, but you buy it in the laundry aisle at the grocery store, and it's like a super-powered laundry detergent. But it is also a crystal that makes this project work. Now, there are some people who do a similar project and they use alum, which you can buy in the spice section at the grocery store, which is made for using pickles, or making pickles. But I've only ever done it with borax, and the results are always predictable and really good. So you can see here that I'm beginning to get a cage that's shaped like I want it to be. Now, geodes in the wild, like this one from Glitterville, you can see how it's shaped. So you can make them all different. Like if I was doing this cage and I decided I suddenly wanted it to be a long and skinny geode, I would just bend it into shape like that. But for these purposes, we're still doing the fat one. Someone said, FYI, borax is non-toxic. Yes, it is. And this is a great project for kids, other than the boiling water that you have to do initially when you start. So if you're doing this, if you're a kid or you're doing it with kids, you have to watch that no one gets hurt. And my cage is starting to fill up and getting thicker. Now, if you don't fill it all the way, you'll just have some holes in your geode, which is not a bad thing either, because then you could see through it and it would bring in some light. But again, look how beautiful this one is, and all the sparkle that you get from it. So, onward. I just about have this one filled. Any other questions there? Brian is also here. He tries to follow the questions because I can't talk and make and look for questions at the same time.
Not too many questions. Somebody said they love your apron.
Oh, thank you very much.
A lot of people really like the project.
It is a great project, and especially right now when everyone's trapped at home and can't go anywhere.
Someone asked that you make sure you post it in your stories after so they can do this project later.
Yes, we will post it in stories. We haven't had a lot of luck with our Instagram live stories saving, which has hurt me because it's really fun and I like the questions and the interaction. And so hopefully today, whatever we've been doing wrong, someone said that it's due to the number of people who are doing Instagram lives right now. The system isn't saving them, so I'm not sure, but...
Someone asked how many pipe cleaners you would use for this size.
Someone asked how many pipe cleaners it would take. This one probably takes about 10 pipe cleaners. You can see there. And pipe cleaners are always a good craft staple. Of the Instagram lives that we've done, I think 2 of them have had pipe cleaners. So, and I have another one coming up that does. So it's a real staple that I always use. Okay, so this one is just about full to capacity. And the other reason that I really like to make it thick and tight here is I don't want you to be able to look at it later and go, oh, that was pipe cleaners that were all woven together. You know, again, we're going for this really solid mass and this inside that's so sparkly. So this one.
Someone asked if you can find borax in Germany, or is there an alternative?
There's been a lot of questions about borax outside of the country, and I'm not sure completely what the answer to that is, but on my Instagram last night, someone actually answered that and said you can go to a chemist, which is a pharmacy, in Europe and find borax as well. And you can also probably Google other names for borax.
Someone else wants to confirm if the pipe cleaners need to match the crystal.
The pipe cleaners don't have to match the crystals, but on the off chance that you were to see through the crystals, I like it to be the same color. So you can see that this is what I'm starting with, and this is what it looks like in the end. But no, it doesn't have to match the color, but I like it to if possible. So once you've got your structure like this, you're ready to move to the next step. But before I do, if you're making yours in a small container, because not everybody has giant glass containers. I know when I started this project years ago, I have giant glass things and I would make big things in those. And people would say, most people don't have those giant glass containers. And this one, if you notice, this is actually a canister that you can purchase at the store. And I think they're Pyrex, so they're really cheap. And you can use them over and over and over again. But let me say for a moment that if you're using a small jar like this, you're going to want to make something that fits more to that size. And I have one here that I've done today also, but let me demonstrate that for this jar, I would do something that was more shaped like the jar and long, like this. And that one would fit in, giving you lots of room around it nicely. Because what happens is, when you've got hot water in a jar, think of water as all molecules. And when it's hot, it will take lots of borax into the water. So it looks like you've got plenty of room to move around because the borax is all swimming. But as it cools down and gets cold, all of those cells run together. And that's when they start taking up space. And you don't want your geode to grow to the side of the glass, because as you can see in this one, it does collect on the sides of the glass as well. So now that you've got your pipe cleaners made and you're ready for the next step, you're going to take a piece of string or twine or yarn, whatever you have, and you're going to run it through the top to give your geode something to hang from, like this. So I'm just going to tie this one on a piece of twine and cut off that extra little piece there, because you don't want the crystals to grow to it too. Okay, now you're going to need a stick of some sort, or you can use a paintbrush, you can use a skewer, or you could use a pencil. For this one, let me use this stick. Well, I'll show you on the jar. So when you get ready to tie it onto your pencil, you want to lower it into your jar. Again, this is not the jar for this one, but you'll want to lower it into the jar and make sure that it doesn't touch the bottom. And that tells you how long you're going to want it to be. So there, it doesn't touch the bottom or the top or the sides, and it needs to be able to swing. And again, for this jar, make a narrow one, which I'll show you in a minute. So once you tie that off to your pencil,
someone asked if you can use wire instead of twine.
You could use wire also. It's just about suspending the piece into the jar.
And a question from a bit ago was, does borax spoil?
Borax does not spoil. It's just a powder. Let me show you what it looks like. Here it is. Usually, in the US at least, it's always 20 mule team borax. You buy it at the store. This is a pretty big box, as you see. And this box was $4. So it's not expensive. And with $4, you can make tons and tons of geodes, depending on the size. Now, the bigger they are, the bigger your jar, and the more borax that you use. For this size jar, it's not actually too much, which we'll get into. So now I've tied it to a pencil and got it ready to lower into the jar, like this. So now for your mixture that you're going to need. This jar holds 3 cups of water. So the amount of water that you put in the jar, 3 cups, we're going to put half of that in borax. So we're going to do 1.5 cups of borax to 3 cups of water. And here's one that I had boiled right before we started. So you've got your water on the stove, and you boil your water, and you pour it into the jar. This is 3 cups. So now I'm going to measure out 1.5 cups of borax. Now keep in mind that the most important part of this step is that your water is boiling. Because if the water is not boiling and hot, it won't start to dissolve the borax. which therefore the borax can't cool down to start forming the crystals. So a little bit more. And the funny thing about borax is it doesn't take up a lot of space in the jar, which you'll see. And that has to do with the scientific effect of when the water is hot, it will take in all the borax you can put in. So here we go. So that is 3 cups of water and 1.5 cups of borax. And actually here you can't really get too much borax, and that's what's growing your crystals. So sometimes I put another little dash in just to make sure I've got plenty of borax in the jar. Now you can see when you start stirring that it's a milky color, but there's also borax in the bottom that is not dissolving. And you want that because this is what they call a saturated solution. And it's saturated because even though it's all mixed up and you see it through here, you also see it in the bottom of the jar. And again, I'm going to give it just a little bit more just for good measure. And I'm going to continue to stir it just a little bit. And now I'm ready to put food coloring if you want to change the color of your geode. Like this one, I had a pink pipe cleaner base, and then I actually put in pink food coloring. So now is the time also to start adding that. And again, there are no real rules with this part, so you can make it as thick as you want or as pastel as you want. But the more color, the deeper the color is on your geode. So now the solution is ready, and I'm going to take my geode and I'm going to lower it into the jar. And you can also take it up and down a little bit just to make it heavy so it does sink. And I'm going to center my pencil in the middle of the jar. And then, to make sure that it doesn't move, I'm going to take some blue tape. If you don't have blue tape, you can use any kind of tape. If you don't have tape at all, you can just put your jar where it's going to be really still and the pencil won't move. But I've got tape, so I'm going to tape it in place.
Can you make one multicolored?
That's a good question. Can you make it multicolored? I have done them where I will add some more food coloring along the way, but it never seems to give it that color that it does initially. I think the better way to do that is I'm actually going to do a few things to this one that we finished at the end, and that might be a time that you could actually add some dye to the actual geode that you've made. So that would be the best way to get more color into it. So now I've taped my pencil to the top of the jar, and because this is hot water, it's going to evaporate. And you don't want any of your crystals to evaporate from the jar. So I'm going to take a piece of aluminum foil, and I'm going to cover the top. And you could also just lay a paper plate or just cover it with anything. You just want the top to be covered so none of the borax can escape. So my jar looks like this currently. Now, you have to set this, here's the hard part. You have to set this aside for at least 8 hours. I usually do this midday or in the evenings, leave it overnight, and then the next morning you have a surprise. So now we have to set this aside and wait until tomorrow. But for our purposes, here's one that I made yesterday in the jar, like we were looking at.
And ask if you could try acrylic inks to layer colors?
You could put acrylic ink into it. That would be a good way to dye it and to get, We actually make a rainbow one, which is done similarly. So that's a good idea and a good way to do it.
And someone else wanted to confirm what food coloring you did use on the other one.
You know, food coloring, there are lots of different strengths. I have food coloring at home that's from Paris and places that I've gathered around the world that are really concentrated, and they make a really good solution. These were actually from the grocery store and were 99 cents for 4. So it's like the lowest grade food coloring that exists pretty much.
And it was pink that you used, right?
And it was pink that I used to get this geode. Now, so here's one I did last night. And I'm going to pull the tape off. Boom, boom, boom. Trying to do this where I show you the reveal, but don't dump it either. Brian's just watching. Now this one, as you can see, is very green. So let me get a paper towel under it. And I'm just going to blot it off. Now someone asked me on Instagram yesterday, now are these hard when you pull them out? And the answer is yes. It's just like a stone. When you see it, it is literally just like a stone. Now this one, we were talking about 2 colors. I put a lot of green in because I was making this one for Brian. He loves green. And then I'm not as crazy about green because I like everything pink. But when I looked in there, I thought, oh, this is very green. Let me add some blue. And you can see here that there is some blue at the bottom and some green at the top. But you can also see the interesting shape that it is. And again, this one, when I made it, fit the jar perfectly. So keep that in mind when you make yours because it looks a little like a pickle. Make sure that it doesn't touch the sides, doesn't touch the bottom, and is still under the glass at the top. So there is the finished one. And this one was not in the solution quite as long as the pink one, so you can still see a little bit of the ribs of the pipe cleaners, and you can see where there's other crystals hooking on. So for me, this one is not done completely. I would like to leave it in more so the back is completely solid, but I think you get the idea there. Now, so you're going to leave it for 8 hours at least. It's probably better if you use a whole day and a half, but you can also look into it a little bit and see. And if you make a couple, you'll be able to tell if if it's been in long enough, if you want it to be larger. You can also start the solution over again and drop it back in to start building it up and making it larger. But it won't work if you just continue to put it into the cold solution, you won't get anything extra because it's the heat that makes when the heat cools is what makes the crystals come together. So this one is very pretty though, actually. Now, so if there are any questions on what we've done so far, on how to actually make the geode, let me know, because I'm going to move on to, here at Glitterville, we love to gild the lily. It's the thing we do. So even though this one is beautiful and shiny and crystally, don't you think it could use a little bit of gold leaf? Everything can use a little gold leaf. Now, I haven't really done this before on this particular project.
Someone's asking if you can reheat that water and use it.
You can reheat the water that you just had, but it will never be as strong as it was. So while you can, I would still add more borax to it. Keep making it a stronger solution.
And just dipping that one into boiling water, does it melt it, or is it?
It doesn't really melt it because, again, it just gives another surface that everything is gonna glum to as it cools. So So yours won't fall apart, if that's what you're asking.
So if they want to add more crystals, they need to start fresh with the new.
I would always start fresh because then everything's better fresh, isn't it? Okay. So I have gold leaf, which I love, as you know. And I'm thinking that the back of this would look really fun if I put some gold leaf on it. Now, usually my go-to for gold leaf fixative is I usually use a spray adhesive, but I tested it on a little piece this morning and it dissolved. So you can't really add anything to this that is not natural. So what I've got is this is a yogurt jar from Paris, but actually inside of it is some sizing that's like a glue, like an Elmer's glue all. And I'm gonna brush the back of the geode. And this is the same adhesive that you would use for any kind of gold leafing that you would do. My gold leaf is something that we actually make, so it is not available, but regular gold leaf at the store will work the same. And usually the adhesives that you use for that are water-based as well. We just can't use the spray adhesive that, like Elmer's spray adhesive, because it was too much, the crystals. I'm gonna dry it just a little bit. You could use Podge as a fixative. I think you can, in the craft world, you can use Podge for a little bit of everything. So now I have some gold leaf here. This is probably not as dry as it would like to be.
From the Philippines is saying hi.
Oh, someone from the Philippines. Hello there. In any normal time in our world, we would be in the Philippines right now, but we're not. We're at home like everyone else. So you can see that the surface is starting to take the gold leaf.
Little sheets of gold leaf from the craft store, and the gold leaf you're using, can they buy it?
Sheets of gold leaf from the store will work fine. The way those are done is, it's lots, when you buy that gold leaf, it's lots of little pieces of very delicate gold leaf that you just sort of blow onto the surface of things because it's so light and delicate. So that would work extremely well in this particular project. The gold leaf that we use is much tougher, and so you have to treat it a little more aggressively. But you can see how it's really starting to take. And my plan is to go up around the edge as well.
I want to ask if automotive metallic paints would work.
Automotive metallic paints would not work because that would be just like the spray adhesive fixative that I tried first. It would be too toxic. You really need something natural to go with this. And now what I'm doing is I'm brushing up around the edge because I want some gold leaf there as well. But the automotive paint would dissolve the crystals just like my spray adhesive did. Model car paint is also too toxic. Again, I think the only thing that you could use on it is water-based paints, and someone suggested dye earlier. Dye would also work as long as it was a water-based dye. You can see how pretty that is at the opening of the geode. Now, as an Easter project, this could be, even though this one is sort of shaped like an egg, so if I were really trying to push the Easter craft here, I could make this an egg and stick a bunny inside, but we're making geodes today. So I'm going to continue to put gold sparkle around the door of the geode. And this project is also good right now because everybody's at home, and if kids do this project today in the day, it gives them something to look forward to tomorrow because they have to wait overnight. So now I'm brushing the rest of the front. Drying it a little bit so the gold leaf will really stick. And just finishing it up as it dries. Now, if you were doing this on an actual egg and you were going to make Easter geodes, the way you would do that is you take your egg, and you can either break it in half, depending on what the shape you want it to be. When I do mine, I would want it to be the egg that just has one side open. So you would need to blow out the egg and cut it with scissors that way to prepare the eggshell. You do have to coat the inside of the eggshell with some white glue, and that gives it a little bit of a surface and you want to pull out the membrane that's actually in an egg. So pull out the membrane, then brush it with white glue, and then you're going to brush it with water and a little bit of borax sprinkled onto it before you drop it into your mixture.
A couple of questions. How long does it take the gold leaf to dry?
The gold leaf starts dry, but whatever you're putting it on with, the adhesive, gold leaf adhesive is a tricky thing because if it's too wet, it won't stick, and if it's too dry, it won't stick. So you really have to work with gold leaf fixatives for a while before you really understand when is it that they want to stick, because that's always the issue. This, you can see, I've been drying it with the hairdryer, and it's still tacky. In some spots, it's a little too tacky, in some spots, not enough, so you just have to learn to gauge that.
Can you use fabric dye in the hot water with the borax?
I have never used fabric dye in the borax, but you probably could. Something like a RIT dye, I think would work fine.
Can you show the borax box again?
The borax looks like this, and it's just a powder, a white powder. So it just looks like Tide. And it's actually, it says at the bottom, it says 20 Mule Team Borax, but it says detergent booster is what it says. I realize I don't know if you're seeing this backward or not. I guess you are. But it just says detergent booster. And even right now, while the grocery stores have really empty shelves, borax seems to still be there because it's not a highly popular detergent, I don't think, for clothes washing, but it's great for crafting. So I'll continue through the day to add a little more gold leaf to this one, but you can see how sparkly and how fun it looks with some gold leaf added. And on this green one, because I'm not as fond of green, although it is pretty, I have to say, I'm going to snip it off its pencil like that. And another thing that you can do, just in case it's not sparkly enough, I have a bag of glitters here. And I think the best thing for this is if you wanted to add some glitter, it would need to be like a pastel glitter itself. This one is like a green pastel. And I'm going to sprinkle some into the geode just to see what it looks like. And if it looks really fun, then I'll add some glue and glue it down. But a lot of it will just stick into the crystal itself because it's still a little bit damp. And you can see there that this end is just the natural crystals and is sparkling. And then this end has a little more sparkle or a different kind of sparkle because I've added the glitter. So there's lots of different ways that you can play with this. It's actually kind of fun. Let me see let me see if I have iridescent glitter that might be fun on the other end. Here's some. So here's a little white iridescent glitter. I'll sprinkle a little bit in. Flashes a little differently. So I'll pour some out. So you could also layer up different colors of glitter and make a really sparkly, even more sparkly geode.
Brzezinski says, is there clear glitter?
Brzezinski, you know the answer to this. There are lots of different kinds of glitter, and that's a whole different live Instagram, because there are glass glitters, there are plastic glitters. If you're actually looking for a clear glitter, you would want to go with something more like this glass glitter, which I wasn't giving as an option, but it is clear and it's completely glass. And this would give you the ultimate effect because it's really beautiful glitter. It's a little harder to get, so, but when you sprinkle it on, it's actually glass like the geode itself, so you could get some really beautiful effects with that. So as you can see here, no matter what you do to it, you can't go wrong. So I hope you have as much fun with this project as I've had doing them, and you can make as many as you like. Look at that, they're so fun. You just make a big pile. Imagine if you made one geode every day of this self-sparkling at home time. Think of how many geodes you'd have at the end. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this project, and we'll do another one soon. And just remember, make it and make every day a holiday.
It was a good one. A lot more people watch crafts than they do the other ones.
Yeah, fun they are.
No, they're really pretty. Anthony at one point said hi. I didn't.
Oh, why did you tell me?
Well, you were in the middle of something at the time, and I forgot that he said that. And my team asked a lot of questions. Some of those were his questions.
Oh.
Yeah.
As many of you just seen, we still don't know what we're doing here. So you have to push 2 buttons for it not to be live anymore. So you were getting to see my reaction to Brian telling me Anthony asked questions and he doesn't tell them.
No, he just said hi. He didn't ask a question.
He says hello and he doesn't tell me those things, and then I don't know till it's over. So anyway, you got to see a little bit of my reaction to how dare you not give me the questions. So anyway, we're ending this, I think. See you later. Bye.